everything that we do stems from a fear of death, right? And the need to know we are immortal beings, that we will live on forever, that it does not end. And that's why we have children. It's an immortality project, so that our legacy lives on through them. So when you have your kids, there's very little understanding about how children are born and a sense of possession, that my children belong to me. Right? And it's a very close-knit feeling. You're probably closer to your children than your spouse or your mother or your sister. The feeling that you have for your children is extremely strong because they belong to you. And you try to live your life through them. What you couldn't do or what you wanted to do, what you didn't like about the way your parents brought you up, what you didn't like about the way you grew up, you try to give to your kids. And when they don't do exactly as you like, when they move from the path slightly, you are shattered. You're completely shattered. I gave so much to my child. And look at him. He's painting on the street. I gave so much to my child. I thought he'd be a lawyer and a doctor and an engineer and, earn well. But he wants to act in movies. What's he doing with his life? We want our kids to get to grow up, become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, get married to a wealthy man, have a station wagon, and live in the suburbs and have 2 kids. That's the plan, master plan that everyone has for their children. And in today's society, the competition has become extremely fierce to make your child succeed. The problem is, every child comes into this world not by you, but through you. In that way, its soul, its Atman, its inner self does not really belong to you more than it belongs to anybody else in this world. It is you that have developed in this child that feeling that you are mine and I am yours. Children come through you. They do not belong to you. You have no right to control them in any possible way. You care for them for your own sake, not for theirs. Because it makes you feel good. Not because, what are they going to do without me? All birds learn to fly. And you see, animal kingdom, they leave their young really early. They leave their young really early. And in a nest of birds, maybe 3 will fly. 2 won't make it. But the next season, the mothers had another 3. Moved on. No, we're not like that. If you lose a child, it holds you back completely. Your entire world shatters. For some reason you feel responsible, you feel guilty, whether a child dies or a child fails. The pain in the mother and father doesn't correspond to what took place. And in this need to make kids do what we want, your whole life passes. All the soccer games, you put them in each and every class. You want them to succeed in each and every area. The children don't even have time to breathe. But where you should be careful, you don't monitor their friends and you don't monitor their TV time, their screen time. These two things one has to be very careful of. I see young parents, they start off very enthusiastic. Oh, no screen time for my child. My child will play in nature. And then as the child grows up and it becomes unbearable, the screen time somehow increases. And then they're making excuses. She only eats if she watches a show. It's only so that she can eat. And then it's only so that, I can just get my messages sent only for 10 minutes, only for 15 minutes. And we put them in front of these screens all the time. All the time. It's different when we were young, growing up. We grew up a lot connected with nature. We grew a lot connected with family. We grew up a lot connected with the ability to problem solve and deal with emotions. We teach our children how to tie their shoes, how a far the sun is from the earth and what the cosmos is, and all the scientific formula for calcium carbonate. But we don't teach them how to deal with failure. We don't teach them how to deal with success. We don't teach them how to live, how to deal with their own emotions, how to deal with their minds, how to develop balance in their lives. They're so driven by success that at some point there has to be a burnout. If you notice, in California, there is a spike in the number of autistic children. I don't know what that is due to. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if it's the water, and I don't know if it's the pressure to succeed. Something is going wrong there. And if you don't monitor your kids well, like whatever they watch on TV, whatever video games they play, it has an effect. You see, the subconscious does not realize whether you're watching real life or a TV. And if the child is emotional while watching, I can remember my daughter cried for 3 days when Bambi died. It was the most traumatic, not Bambi, Bambi's mother dies, right? Oh my God. I never realized that even watching a cartoon can have such an impression on a child. Then can you imagine playing a video game where you're shooting and killing indiscriminately, winning wars? What can that do to your mind? How is it going to desensitize you? Be careful what your children watch. Be careful. Guruji always says, for every hour of television that you watch, regardless of the show, you have to meditate for 4 hours to compensate.
Wow.
Because even if it's the news or it's a TV show, there are violent images always coming through. And those violent images, they stay in your subconscious. You get more or less desensitized. You're playing video games like this. If you have access to a gun, can you imagine? You don't realize the consequences of, what you're doing, this, the difference between life and death. You're in an emotional overdrive. I always say, children must never be brought up in a home where there are guns. I know that in this country, 90% of the homes probably have guns. But I can't imagine the trauma of a child playing with a gun and doing something, and they're watching shows all the time, bang, bang, boom, boom. What do they know the difference between a loaded and an unloaded gun? I had someone who said, I keep a gun at home, but it's kept separately and then the ammunition is somewhere else. So like when the thief comes into the house, you're going to say, just wait 1 minute, I have to find the ammunition, get the gun ready. Doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense to me. When kids learn to see violence all the time, their whole attitude changes. This entire generation has an inability to connect with the outside world. It's getting worse and worse. First, you used to see it in teenagers and college kids, that they were always like this instead of talking in a group.
Yeah.
Now you see kids doing it. And you see, there is the interface between that and this is you and your mind. They like me, they don't like me. They like me, I'm popular, I'm not popular. It's without it saying anything or doing anything, it's giving you the wrong feedback and the wrong signals. And then when they go out into the world, they can't react to people. They can't find the correct spouse. They can't get into a relationship or keep a relationship because their primary relationship is with a phone. That's what they love more than anything else in the world. I love going for the silence courses because for that whole time you don't look at your phone at all. You'd be surprised how connected we all are because that's our communication. And for kids, it's even worse. There is so much of cyberbullying. And Melania hasn't helped very much reduce that. But it's a problem. It's a problem. I mean, kids go through a lot of trouble connecting with each other because of there's too much screen time. Nobody needs the phones. Yet I do agree, in the real world we live in is different. It was those phones that connected them to the outside world during the Parkland shooting, and when such horrible things are happening to children, it's a different world. We do the best. We do the best that we can, given our circumstances. But how the kids turn out is quite something else. They'll turn out the way they are. And at some point, they say that from 0 to 5, you must just be their caretaker, taking care of their needs. From 5 to 10, you have to start disciplining them. You've got to be take out the whip and make them learn, toe the line. And when they cross 15, you've got to become their friend. But I always caution, you are never the friend, you are always the parent. You are always the parent, and they must know that you are, after all, the parent. What we do is we get so caught up in our children's lives, their successes, their failures. Everything moves us so much. Every time they do well, we do well. Every time they do badly, we do badly. It's like a constant roller coaster ride for parents. There is a very nice analogy that comes in the Vedanta that says that you plant a seed and then you water it and you give it sunlight, and finally a plant comes through. And you're amazed at how beautiful that plant looks. And then it grows and it grows. And as it's growing into a sapling, before it can even become a tree, you take a rope and you tie yourself to it. Now at this point, when it's ready to flower and fruit, you can't tell because you're tied. You can't see anything. You're too involved in the tree. You can't make out where the flowers are and where the fruits are. You cannot do the right things when you're tied up. So you have to untie that rope that you have with your children. You have to take a step back. You have watered the plant. You've given it natural sunlight, whatever it needs to grow. Now just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. A little bit of dispassion after the children grow up is needed, because no matter how we bring them up with, our family values, our Hindu values and Jewish values and Christian values, whatever you want to call them, they develop their own values. And sometimes that challenges what we think or believe. But if you have taken a step back and you realize that the children don't belong to you, that, they didn't come because of you, they only came through you, it helps to develop that distance so that it's not that different. Your sense of belonging must not just be surrounded, with husband and children. It has to increase. You have a huge spiritual family. It could include your children, but it need not. And we need to increase our sense of belonging. Yes, our children are good, but in addition to giving them the stress of needing to succeed and the stress of doing well and the stress of getting into a good college and the stress of finding the right person, the stress of marrying, and then the stress of having children, let them be. Let them also live their life effortlessly. Be there to guide them. But don't be so involved in their lives that it doesn't even let you think. Ultimately, bringing up children is very subjective. It just depends on the child, on the parents, where they live, whether they're rich or poor, whether they belong to one faith or the other, one school district or another. So many influences. But know that the divine light that shines in you shines in that child. The same consciousness flows through all of us. And that everything in the end is going to be all right.